Today we will have to end that a little earlier, as it is an holiday in Israel. So we will end about at the top of the hour. We have a special topic today related to Yom Hazikaron. Today is Yom Hazikaron. The day of when we remember the Memorial Day, the Israel Memorial Day, we remember the fallen soldiers, and we will talk about the relationship between Yom Hazikaron and Bar Kochva. We'll talk also about the relationship between Bar Kochva and Sfirat HaOmer, and we'll try to see how this helps us today to better understand what's going on in Israel and how we can really bring Mashiach as soon as possible. So that's our topic. So today we are remembering the fallen Israeli soldiers, and we're also remembering the victim of terrorism. And the number is unfortunately adding up every year for the past 74 years. And this year we reached the number of 24,000 fallen Israeli soldiers, 24,068 fallen Israeli soldiers. And this is remarkably similar to the 24 students of Rabbi Akiva. So as Rabbi Ginsburg say, you know, we can, there's nothing just happening without a reason, and numbers are very telling. So there is probably a relationship between Rabbi Akiva, 24,000 students, and the 24,000 fallen Israeli soldiers that we remember today, soldiers which gave their life for the people of Israel. We are able to have this Zoom session today thanks to them. We owe our freedom, Jews all over the world, not only in Israel, all over the world. Jews owe their freedom and their dignity to these 24,000 fallen Israeli soldiers. So we want to talk about the connection between the 24,000 fallen Israeli soldiers and the 24,000 Rabbi Akiva students. If you remember the story, the Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students, and they all died at one period of time because they did not accord honor one to the other. So this, the same way the fallen Israeli soldiers passed away, the same way the Rabbi Akiva student passed away, but probably for a different reason. If we go to the Gemara and we try to understand what happened there, so it's being told that they did not accord honor one to the other, and lo kibdu ze et ze. So it's difficult to understand why, okay, they didn't behave properly, they didn't respect each other, they did not accord honor one to the other. Is that really a reason for such a tragic epidemic? and 24,000 Talmidei Chachamim, the heads of Torah, passing away just because they didn't behave properly. And the world was desolate until Rabbi Akiva reached our rabbis in the south and taught the Torah to them. They were Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and Rabbi Eliezer his son. And they revived the Torah at that time. So all this story is very related to our to Sfirat HaOmer, the period we are going through. And we know that the reason we are observing mourning tradition, there is no wedding during these 33 days from Pesach to Lag BaOmer. Ashkenazim even go until Shavuot. And, we don't go to, we don't have joys. We don't cut our hair. Some people don't even shave. All these mourning observances are related to the tragic events of the passing of Rabbi Akiva's students. And one, it's not so clear why they passed away. It's very cryptic what the Gemara is saying. They did not accord one to the other. Why that would be a reason for killing them all. And also, even with such tragic events of 24,000 students dying, it's still not clear why this became, for all the generation, such a long period of mourning. We had a lot of catastrophe, unfortunately, in our Jewish history. We had a lot of tragic events and entire villages being killed. And we didn't set up a several weeks mourning period. So these are known questions. One more thing about the relationship between the Memorial Day, Yom Hazikaron, and Rabbi Akiva students or Sfirat HaOmer is that this year the Independence Day is not on the 5th of Iyar as usual, because it would be on Friday. And in order not to cause Shabbos transgressions, the state is celebrating Yom Ha'atzmaut one day earlier, the 4th of Iyar. Today was the 3rd of Iyar, and it was Memorial Day in Israel, and it was Chai of the Omer, the 18th day of the Omer. So also this is Ashgacha that the Memorial Day, where we remember the fallen soldier, is the day we give life, we give Chai to Sfirat HaOmer. So we need to understand how this year we are giving. So we have two things special this year. One, the number of fallen soldiers is the same number as 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. And it's also this year, the Memorial Day is the 18th day of the Omer. So somehow their passing is giving Chai, is giving life to the Omer. It's the Chai of the Omer. So we have a lot of questions. Question one, what's the relationship between the fallen soldier and Rabbi Akiva students? Second question, how can we explain that the passing of the 24,000 students, just because they did not accord honor one to the other? Three, why our sages, or actually the Rishonim, our rabbis, have set up this period as a mourning period. It was supposed to be a period of joy. In the Torah, it's written that these are the weeks of harvest. We have 7 weeks of harvest starting from the day after Pesach. We bring the Korban of the Omer. We bring the first crop to the temple. And we get into 7 weeks of harvest. And these weeks, and we get to the Atzeret, we get to the day 50, which is Shavuot. And this is Atzeret. This is like a festival of the harvest. Shavuot is not, in the Torah, there is no reference to Shavuot being the day of Matan Torah. Shavuot is the peak of the 7 weeks of harvest. So this whole period is supposed to be a period of joy. Weeks of harvest. And instead, they became over time, starting from the passing of Rabbi Akiva students, they became weeks of mourning. The Ramban is even saying that this is like a long Chol HaMoed. The same way we have 7 days of Sukkot, and the 8th day is Atzeret. It's a special holiday, Shmini Atzeret, which means the pig, the festival, the gathering. The same way we have 7 days of Passover, and then we count 7 weeks. And so here we are counting weeks rather than days. And this ended up being Shavuot, the Atzeret. So there is a similar structure, a parallel structure between Sukkot and Passover. Sukkot leading to the Atzeret of Shmini Atzeret after 7 days. And Shavuot and the Passover leading to the Atzeret of Shavuot after 7 weeks of harvest. So it was supposed to be a Chol HaMoed, a long Chol HaMoed, a very festive period. It's the time also the nature in Eretz Israel is blossoming. The harvest in the field, the trees are starting to give their fruits, flowers from Tu Bishvat starting, and then fruits through the summer. So this is springtime, and it was supposed to be very festive. This is the best. It would have been the best day to actually have weddings, and nevertheless, we ended up with weeks of mourning. So that's also we need to understand. So to understand this, all these questions, we need to go back to a little bit of history and understand what happened with Bar Kochva, and what happened with the revolt of Bar Kochva. So we need to go back on time. We are after the destruction of the Second Temple, which was destroyed 70 years in our era. And then 62 years later, there is a huge revolt of a popular revolt led by Shimon Bar Kochva. We don't have a lot of writings. This is a very traumatic period in Jewish history. And we have very cryptic descriptions in the Talmud. Like it's very difficult to talk about it. It's so traumatic because the end of the revolt is the fall of Betar, and according to historians, 500,000 to 1 million Jews died. And this is the end of the Jewish settlement in the land of Israel. So it's extremely tragic. This happened also on the 9th of Av, Betisha B'Av, in the year 135. So this is like about less than 1900 years ago. So one of the most reliable sources is Cassius Dio, a Roman senator who wrote a Roman history. And he said that what happened is that Emperor Hadrian decided to raise Jerusalem and to call it Aelia Capitolina. He wanted to make Jerusalem a Roman city with a new name, the capital of Jupiter, and to establish on the Temple of the Mount, to raise a new temple to Jupiter. And Cassius Dio tells us that the Jews deemed it intolerable. They wouldn't accept that foreign races should be settled in their city and foreign religious rites planted there. These led to a huge revolt. And actually, Bar Kochva was very successful initially. And he ended up taking back Jerusalem, expelling the Romans. And for 2.5 years, during this time frame, 132 to 133, Bar Kochva was the king of Israel. And actually also there are a lot of debate among historians. There used to be a lot of debate among historians about Bar Kochva, if this was, how much this revolt was supported by the people, how much Bar Kochva was an extreme person, military leader, which led to a disaster, or is he a hero and a freedom fighter which ended up taking back Jerusalem and fighting for freedom? So that was the questions. There are a lot of findings in the past 30, 40 years. Archaeologists found 150 caves in the Judean desert, Midbar Yehuda, and close to also Hebron, close to Betar. They found a lot of caves and a lot of underground tunnels connecting the caves, 150 caves. Not only that, we found Yigal Yadin, the first chief of staff of the Israeli army, which was also a famous archaeologist. He found in these caves coins which were printed by Bar Kochva. And we have some example of these coins here. They are famous. With the temple in Jerusalem, and also coin with the 4 species, Arba Minim, and also letters from Bar Kochva to different people. So we'll see one of them. So actually, it's clear that this was today it's clear that this was a very well-organized revolt. with 150 caves, which were prepared before the revolt. He must have been supported by the people, by the Jews all over the country. And also he must have had support from the rabbinical authorities. Okay. So this wasn't just an extreme person which made a revolt. This was really a popular leader, which was well organized and took a very ambitious task of expelling the Roman Empire from the land of Israel and rebuilding the temple. So because of his success, Rabbi Akiva became the main supporter of Bar Kochva. Rabbi Akiva, which is the cornerstone of the oral Torah of the Mishnah and Gemara, Rabbi Akiva was a supporter of Bar Kochva, and not only a supporter, but he saw him as the Mashiach. The Rambam in the Law of Kings mentioned that, and the Rambam actually goes with the Jerusalem Talmud. There is actually two different versions of the facts and two very different descriptions of Bar Kochva revolt in the Talmud Yerushalmi versus the Babylonian Talmud. Let's see, we need to mute. It's clear, and Rabbi Ginsburg mentioned that it's clear that the Rambam is going with the Jerusalem Talmud, which was also closer in time and closer to the facts. So here's what the Rambam is saying. One should not presume that the Messianic king, the Mashiach, must work miracles and wonders, bring about new phenomena in the world, resurrect the dead, or perform other similar deeds. This is definitely not true. So for the Rambam, at least initial Messianic times are regular times. There is no miracles, there is no change in the laws of nature. And in order to prove that, he brings Rabbi Akiva. Proof can be brought from the fact that Rabbi Akiva, one of the greater sages of the Mishnah, was one of the supporters of King Bar Kochva. His name Bar Kochva, there was a lot of research why he was named Bar Kochva. And actually, recently, it was found that this was a location, Kochva was a location, village near Hebron, where Shimon was from. Shimon from Kochva. So Rabbi Akiva was one of the supporters of King Bar Kochva, and would describing as the Mashiach. And that's not only Rabbi Akiva, he and all the sages of his generation consider him to the Mashiach, to the Messianic king, until he was killed because of sins. Once he was killed, they realized that he was not the Mashiach. The sages did not ask him for any signs or wonders. So we see that from the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Rambam sees and states that Rabbi Akiva, and not just him, but the entire rabbinical authority of that generation, saw Bar Kochva as Mashiach, probably because of his success in wars, as this is one of the parameters, one of the criteria to know if a leader is a potential Mashiach. He needs to be freeing Israel and making war for the sake of Israel to free the land of Israel. And then the Rambam goes on and learns that if a king will arise from the house of David, which diligently contemplates the Torah and observe its mitzvot, as prescribed by the written and the oral law, like David, and even if he did not succeed to this, if he died and then he builds a temple, then we know he's a Mashiach. And if he did not succeed to this degree or was killed, he's surely not the Redeemer promised by the Torah. Rather, he should be considered as all the other proper and complete kings of the Davidic dynasty who died. So the Rambam sees Bar Kochva as one of the proper and complete kings of the dynasty of David, which unfortunately did not succeed. Success is not one of the criteria of righteousness. It is a criteria as he is a Mashiach, but he wasn't Mashiach Sheker. He wasn't a false Mashiach. He was a potential Mashiach which did not succeed, and he was a rightful person. And apparently also he kept the mitzvah. So that's also a question, how much Bar Kochva kept the Torah. So that's also there was different sources. One source in the Talmud Yerushalmi is saying that Bar Kochva said to Hashem, don't help and don't disturb. We don't need you. So Bar Kochva, which was a very brave and powerful military leader, but also, as Rabbi Ginsburg characterized him, he was in default, he was making the scene of too much of self-confidence, and he was too full of himself, and he didn't subjugate himself to Hashem. He wasn't in bitul with Hashem, and he was a Mashiach of Tohu. So that's one aspect. Another aspect that Rabbi Ginsburg also brings is that we have found Bar Kochva correspondence, and we found Bar Kochva letters. Yigal Yadin, as the first chief of staff of the Israeli army, of Tzal, a very famous archaeologist, found in the caves. He found this letter. You can see in the background the letter. We can see the Hebrew letter. It's unbelievable that we found this like in the 70s. And this is what Bar Kochva is writing. Shimon is Shimon Bar Kochva. And he's actually signing Shimon Bar Koziva from where he was. I have delivered to you 2 donkeys in order that you dispatch along with them 2 men to Jonathan and to Mesabela, in order that they pack up and deliver to the camp to you palm branches and etrogim, lemons, etrogim, citrons. And you are to send additional person from your place and let them bring you myrtle branches and willows. So Hadassim ve'aravot. So basically we see Bar Kochva was organizing by himself the 4 species. He was asking Yehuda, son of Menashe, from Kiryat Avaya to deliver palm branches, lulavim, and etrogim, palm branches and citrons. And he would send them, because where he was probably a place where they had a lot of aravot, myrtle branches and adassim, myrtle branches and willows. And he said, I will send you this, you will send me the other two species. So it's unbelievable to see that Bar Kochva was very conscientious. He wanted to make sure that his soldier would be able to perform the 4 species mitzvah. So we can see this is a complex personality. In one end, he's respectful of the mitzvot. On the other hand, before the fight, he's telling Hashem, let us do it. We don't need you. So it's a complex personality. We know also from other sources that Bar Kochva was asking his soldiers to cut with their teeth one of their fingers to see if they were brave enough. And the sages, the Chachamim, were very upset. As it's written in the Talmud, why are you making the son of Israel handicap people, Baalei Mumim? And they had, so they were against it. And so Bar Kochva changed the military test. They had to be on an horse and to gallop with the horse very fast and to be able to, with one hand, to uproot erez, a tree. So this, and he had 200,000 soldiers. So Bar Kochva put together a very powerful army, which was surprising the Roman Empire, and which was using commando tactics by hiding in caves and going through underground, and all of a sudden surprising the enemies and killing thousands of Romans. But this actually succeeded for a couple of years, even issued coins. And on the coins, he's signing the king of Israel, the president of Israel. He saw himself as the Mashiach. And it's written that Rabbi Akiva was noseh kelav. He was ending his utensils. Another way to understanding, as Rabbi Gin will say, is that kelim is recipients. And because Bar Kochva was tow, and he was a light, but a light of tow, which would break the vessels, the recipients. So Rabbi Akiva was trying to build vessels for the light of tow, the light of chaos of Bar Kochva. He was trying to contain his energy and to make sure he will stay in the way of Torah. But it didn't work out. And eventually, Betar fell. And here is a description of the fall of Betar. This is in the Jerusalem Talmud. I translated in English. It's a long text, but I think it's worthwhile to go through. 3.5 years, Adrien put siege in around Betar. Rabbi Elazar Amodai is a known sage from the Mishnah, and he was the uncle of Bar Kochva. And Rabbi Elazar Amodai was in Betar, and he was mourning with sackcloth and ashes, and he was praying all day long. This is my translation, so maybe there are some mistakes. Saying, Master of all worlds, don't sit on the seat of judgment today. So he was basically imploring Hashem, asking to forgive Bar Kochva and his sins, and to not to sit on the seat of judgment. Adrian finally wanted to give up and to remove the siege and to leave. You know, it took 3.5 years. But then a Kuti told him, you know, a foreign person, a Kuti told him, a local person, don't leave, I will give you the city. The Kuti went into Betar, into the city, through the sewage pipes, and he found Rabbi Elazar Modai praying. He made himself like he was whispering in his ear. So basically, the Kuti was like a spy. He was able to sneak in the city. And while Rabbi Elazar Amodai was praying, he intentionally made himself like he was close to him. He wanted to be seen. So this way, he would be suspected to do something with, to prepare something against Bar Kochva. So this Kuti was seen and taken to Bar Kochva. And the soldier of Bar Kochva told the Bar Kochva, we saw this man talk to your uncle. Rabbi Elazar Amodai was the uncle of Bar Kochva. Bar Kochva asked, he has a Kuti, what did he tell you? And the Kuti said, he told me how to capture the city. So he basically, the Kuti insinuated that Rabbi Elazar Amodai was a traitor. And he wanted to give the city to the Romans, which would have made sense because he was like, probably there was a lot of dispute internally. If this siege made sense, they should give up, as you typically get in this extreme situation. Bar Kochva asked, then Bar Kochva went to his uncle, Rabbi Elazar Modai. What did this Kuti told you? Rabbi Elazar Modai answered, nothing. What did you tell him? Nothing. Bar Kochva kicked his uncle, Rabbi Elazar ben Modai, and killed him. Immediately a voice declared, you killed Rabbi Elazar Modai, the harm of all Israel, and the right high. The same day, Betar fell, and Bar Kochva was killed. So very sad story of the end of Bar Kochva. So we can see that Bar Kochva was a complex personality. In one hand, he was extremely brave. He was ready to give his life, and he was a charismatic leader which was able to gather and organize the revolt. And he was a proud Jew which wanted to expel the Roman Empire. He was able to organize a revolt and to beat the Romans, to take back Jerusalem. But he was also from the toe, he was chaotic. And Rabbi Akiva didn't succeed to temper him and to make him tikkun, to make his light, as the Rebbe says, Mashiach is light of Torah, immense light, but in vessels of tikkun, in rectified vessels. So meaning you need an extreme energy in order to rectify this world, but you need this extreme energy to be channelized and into vessels of rectifications, which are the laws of Torah, the mitzvot. And for Bar Kochva, that was obviously a challenge. So here, How all this relates to Rabbi Akiva students. So yesterday I was looking in the new site of Rabbi Ginsburg, who have a new search engine, and I was amazed to see the next thing from Rabbi Ginsburg. Rabbi Ginsburg said that Rabbi Akiva students were Bar Kochva soldiers. And actually, there are a number of scholars, and I know additional rabbis, and this is becoming more and more accepted, that Rabbi Akiva students were Bar Kochva soldiers. So when the Talmud tells us that the 12,000 couples passed away during this period, and that in the rabbis made an halacha that we need to observe mourning custom because of that. In fact, everything can be explained because we are talking about the tragedy of the failure of the Bar Kochva revolt, the killing of hundreds of thousands of Jews, and the loss of hope to rebuild the temple until our days. So that explains why this became what we asked earlier, why this became such a big deal. Yes, it's a tragedy, but this is not a tragedy just of 24,000 students. This is a tragedy of the Jewish people, losing sovereignty on the land of Israel, losing settlement in the land of Israel, losing the temple, and really the Galut. So Rabbi Ginsburg said Lag BaOmer became in Israel Bar Kochva Day, and Lag BaOmer is the day the 24,000 Rabbi Akiva students ceased from dying. However, it makes sense to assume that they were actually Bar Kochva soldiers, because Rabbi Akiva was the main believer and supporter of Bar Kochva. So everything starts to make more sense if you think about it, is that these 7 weeks between Pesach and Shavuot were supposed to be weeks of harvest as written in the Torah. They were supposed to be festive weeks. But then what happened is that in the 2nd century of our era, we had this tragedy of the Bar Kochva revolt. And the Bar Kochva revolt awakened a lot of hope, and all the sages, all the Chachamim believe Bar Kochva is Mashiach. And that's it. After the same way, after 70 years, the first temple was destroyed, the second temple was built. They were hoping that after 65 years of the destruction of the second temple, the third temple, the eternal temple, will be built. And Bar Kochva was potentially Mashiach, but he needed the rectification of Rabbi Akiva. And this didn't work out because of sins. And Bar Kochva wasn't rectified. And these Rabbi Akiva students, which were not just Torah scholars, they were also brave soldiers, they died. And this is because this was such a traumatic event. The Babylonian Talmud is only alluding about these events, and he's mentioning that they did not honor each other. What they did not honor each other probably relate to the brutal behavior of Bar Kochva. He was brutal. He was a military leader, and as a military leader which was tasked to beat the Roman Empire, he behaved in rough ways. And Chachamim were against his behavior, and they were against the fact that he was asking the soldier to cut their finger with their teeth and making them handicapped, Baalei Mumim. So that's what the Talmud Bavli is alluding to. Nevertheless, we have the Rambam clearly stating that Bar Kochva was supported by Rabbi Akiva and all the sages, and it makes sense that Rabbi Akiva didn't support just by studying in yeshiva. He actually guided and instructed his students to go and fight. And this is also, we can see the parallel between Bar Kochva soldiers and the 24,000 fallen Israeli soldiers. They are the same Mesirut Nefesh, the same dedication to the people of Israel. And hopefully we will be able this time to rectify, to make sure that this immense energy of the Israeli youth and the willingness of the Israeli soldiers, religious and non-religious, will be this time rectified by the light of Torah. And actually, Rabbi Ginsburg explained also that the generation after Bar Kochva and Rabbi Akiva, and at the end, Rabbi Akiva was killed by the Romans with the 10 Harugei Malchut, the 10 sages which were killed by the Romans. And the next generation was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir said he is a Mashiach. Meir is the same gematria like Bar Kochva. And basically the Torah of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Zohar and the Kabbalah and the Hasidus, is a new light which was created as a result of the Betar fall and Bar Kochva revolt failure. This led to the light of the Zohar, the light of Kabbalah, the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And that explains why we stop the morning on Lag BaOmer, the day of the passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, by Lula of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So this explains the whole morning and morning cease of Lag BaOmer. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we will continue to rectify these 7 weeks and bring the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the light of Hasidut, to the state of Israel. We'll rectify the state of Israel the same way Rabbi Akiva wanted to rectify Bar Kochva, and we'll see Mashiach in our times.
Amen.
Amen. Can you?
Thank you.
Yeah, we have only limited time, 5 minutes for some question. I need to get to Ma'ariv for the celebrations.
Yeah, thank you. Was somebody asking something? I just heard somebody's voice. Oh, okay. I don't know. So it seems to me, I mean, Bar Kochva was like these people were amazing. It seems to me that we're kind of like going through potential Mashiachs until we get it right.
Yes, exactly.
Until really the Mashiach comes and presents it. It's kind of like, but all of the things within them, like Bar Kochva, the amazing courage. I mean, I see parallels with the Israeli generals, and the great generals, like the Moshe Dayans or whatever, or, some of the other generals. One sees that amazing and beautiful courage, which is so inherent in the Israeli people. And it's a beautiful, I mean, I think obviously it's going too far then to say, oh, we don't need Hashem. I mean, that's where you kind of veer off, the path. But to me, there's such holiness in and the rabbi, what was his name? Who
Rabbi
saw?
Akiva,
No, not Rabbi Akiva.
Eleazar Amodai.
No, he saw he helped the pioneers when they were coming in. Cook, Rabbi Cook.
Rabbi Cook, yeah.
He saw
Yeah.
that. He saw that. He saw that spiritual greatness. And I see that, and I saw that when I went to Israel. That's why I don't like names like religious or not religious. It really bothers me, because I saw in the soldiers, I saw this amazing Mesiras Nefesh, and I saw this amazing love for the land and amazing courage. And that to me just says it all. I mean, okay, we're going to have to get it right. We'll have to just push through till we get Mashiach right. But these attributes in these people are very praiseworthy. Like a bar Kochva.
Yes, Hazak Bracha, thank you. And there is a good question here. I don't know the name, but is there a connection between the 24,000 which died with Pinchas? When Pinchas killed
Zimri.
Zimri ben Salu. Yeah, I think Pinchas, Rabbi Ginsburg said one time, he compared Pinchas and Yeshua bin Nun. And there was something in Pinchas which was Kanaut. He was, how do you say Kanai? He was Zilot, right? Zealot. Yeah, and something which was not fully rectified. That's why he didn't become the leader after Moshe. While Yeshua, which was more moderate and he was able to see Elohei Aruchot. He was able to see the merit of everyone in the people of Israel. He wasn't a zealot. So Yeshua became the leader. So yes, there is a parallel here between Pinchas. Pinchas is somewhat related to Bar Kochva.
And then the name of the woman was Cosby, but
Koziva, Cosby. Yeah, Rabbi Ginsburg gets into it.
Yeah, what does he say? That's crazy.
Yeah, very good point. So you are relating to Rabbi Ginsburg. You bring that to his shiur. I will put, so the shiur of Rabbi Ginsburg, it's in Hebrew, but I will put the link. And he's talking about also what you just mentioned. So I'm going to put that in the Zoom. So this is a Hebrew article in our new site. And another thing, I wanted also to share, I shared with you last week, last week class, I put on Medium an article about sea and revelation. Thank you for the feedback, Tesha and other. I had some good feedback. So I ended up posting this sea and revelation. I will put that back. Maybe I will show it to you here. Share screen.
You're going to post it on the.
So this is the final version, sea and revelation, what we discussed. It's a shorter version. We are trying also to get non-Jews. Rabbi Ginsburg instructed us to try to be sharing and Jewish content to non-Jews, as you know. So I'm trying, that was written also for non-Jews. You will see it's a different language than what you are used to. If you can distribute it also in your Facebook and so, that would be good. Because we are trying to test also if this type of content can be compelling for non-Jews.
Is that the Noahide laws you're teaching them?
We are teaching here. I actually am taking the classes I'm delivering with you and making it kind of simpler and posting short version on Medium. So I put the link.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yaacov,
Yeah,
you.
we actually, Rabbi Ginsburg wants to outreach to non-Jews.
Yes.
He thinks that's the main thing today.
Mhm.
And he's encouraging some non-Jews will stay non-Jews and learn Torah and respect the 7 law of Noah. Some will also be convert to Judaism. He's very active, and he's asking other rabbis to join him. So,
And that
this
also attracts our own Jewish children. When they see non-Jews are interested
Exactly.
in religion.
Exactly, that's the way to attract all the Jews.
Then it's an in thing, then they're attracted to it.
Yeah, because they mimic the non-Jews, exactly.
Right.
So thank you, Esther. Welcome, Esther.
Thank you so much. And may we see no more bloodshed, please God. This should be the end of it.
And may we, I think also there are all these debate on the, so we wish Esther every success in her journey. And Rabbi Ginsburg wants also conversions to be more sensitive and more open without compromising with the law of Torah. He recently met with Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu, the son of the Rav Mordechai Eliyahu. And may we also look at the state of Israel in a positive light, and we help rectify the state of Israel. And the same way Rabbi Akiva wanted to rectify Bar Kochva, maybe we'll be successful this time.
Amen. Let us Can I just ask
Okay.
a historical question?
Thank you.
Can I?
Yes, last question before my wife gets mad at me.
I'm sorry, but regarding Matityahu and Yehuda and the Maccabees and the story of Hanukkah, that happened right after the destruction of the temple, and then Bar Kochva came along.
It's different periods. So the Hashmonaim revolt has a lot of similar things to it, right?
So it's two different revolts.
But it's happening in a different time. It's happening between the two temples. Actually, it's happening after the building of the second temple, but before the destruction of the second temple. Here, this happened after the destruction. And so you have about 200 years difference between the two revolts.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to know. And is there any connection between the Hashmonaim and Bar Kochva?
Not direct, but they are, it's kind of the same line.
Because the Hashmonaim, they took over, they became the high priest, the Cohen Gadol.
They were high priests. So the difference is that there is no dispute that the Hashmonaim were righteous Jews, unlike Bar Kochva, where it's not so clear, and Bar Kochva was more chaotic, more tohu. But also there is critics in the Talmud that the Hashmonaim, they were Kohanim, and they were not supposed to become kings.
Right, so it's just interesting that with the Hashmonaim, they led through being Kohanim, and Bar Kochva led becoming king, right? So you have the two,
and maybe Bar Kochva was probably from the David dynasty, because if not, according to what we read in the Rambam, he looked that way, and Rabbi Akiva wouldn't believe he's a Mashiach if he wasn't from the Davidic dynasty. So he wasn't a Cohen, he was actually a descendant of David.
Yeah, but I'm
David.
just those two parallel, like we were told to be Mamlechet Kohanim B'Goy Kadosh, right? That we have to be both holy, but also to have that aspect of the nation of Israel. And so between those two leaders, they tried to restore the,
Yes, they are trying to restore.
authority
I think the common ground is that they were both military leaders and spiritual leaders. The Hashmonaim were both. They were Kohanim, but they were also military leaders. Bar Kochva was just a military leader attached to mitzvot, committed to mitzvot, as we saw, but it's Rabbi Akiva, which was supposed to give him the Torah as a light of Torah. So, yes, Tesha?
Yes, I don't have a question, but thank you for teaching us today.
Okay.
No comments.
So I think we will pass on next week, and so we will talk about, we'll get closer to Shavuot, we'll have a class about Shavuot.